Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Notice I've got my collection set up over here. I've got things put into different collections so I can make them visual or not see them, turn them off, and get things out of the way. As projects become more complicated, that becomes more important. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and make a beam, and these are just some simple tricks that are going to help. First thing I'm going to do is scale this thing down and then scale him just on the x-axis. So that's my basic beam shape. And now the first thing I want to do is to go into, notice if I hit bevel, it bevels very strangely, and that's because I didn't apply the scale. It's important to do this, so just Control A, that makes the menu pop up, and then you apply the scale. So now when I hit Control B to bevel and pull the mouse a little bit, it bevels evenly on all 6 sides. In any case, as I move on now, I'm going to add a loop cut, Control R, just add some geometry, and the next thing I'm going to do is going to make your life a lot easier, I think, for this particular project and in general. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and change the size. So I'm going to give this the illusion of being a little bit less uniform, make it look like it's actually been hewn out of a big chunk of, let's say, oak 500 years ago, so things weren't machine-made like they are today. So I'll just make it look a little bit rougher and make it have a little style. And so I'm just going through each of these loop cuts, and I'm scaling some up, I'm scaling some down, I'm rotating just a little bit just to give it some unevenness, and that will make the entire thing look a little bit more like an actual plank or chunk of wood. Okay, so you can see I'm just hitting R to rotate, S to scale, move things around a little bit, and that's going to look a whole bunch better. When I scaled this, it's scaled out from the origin. And so one of the things you can do to make your life a bit easier is I'm looking right down the y-axis now, and with transparency up on the top set, I've grabbed these guys. So I set the cursor to where those selected pieces are, and now in object mode, I go to Object, Set, Origin, and I can move that to the 3D cursor. And so now my geometry stays the same, but the origin is moved to the edge. And what that allows me to do is when I scale along the X, it's just going to change the size. So let's go ahead and do that. I hit, if I grab this guy now, Shift-D to duplicate. If I scale him, notice he's just changing the size in the X. So he has the same height and width, but as I scale on the X, he's just going to be scaling down on just the X-axis. And so I think that's pretty good. Okay, all of these guys are in my beams folder, and so now it's very easy for me to just take one. Let's say I take this guy. Oh, I'm going to rename them Beam 2 and Beam 3. So I've got 3 different beams in my beam folder, or my beam collection actually. And so now I will just take one of these guys and move him up into my working folder. So let's let's grab beam, let's see, beam 1. So I move him up into working, and then I can turn off the beams, or turn off the visibility, and so now I just have a single beam in my folder. Okay? So now I'm ready to go ahead and just rotate this, and it's going to rotate always around the origin, or that's what I have it set to. And so I can scale it, and it just changes the height. I can Shift-D, move it over. And so this is going to make some of these a lot simpler. Rotate on the Y 90 degrees. And now I can grab him on the X, and if I scale him, he just scales out from the origin on the X direction. So I just say SX and just move him out that way. And that's it. So Shift-D is going to give me more posts. Just move Shift-D and then X to move it out on the X-axis. Again, Shift-D, X, and so I've got some posts holding up that beam, and that looks pretty good. Okay, now I want to try another modifier that we haven't used before. Or maybe we have, but in any case, I'm going to go ahead and say Shift-D, copy that beam out, and if I want to move him down on the Z-axis. So I just go over here to the Z-transform, hit 0, and he's back down there at the bottom. Now, hitting 7 on the numpad, I'm looking at him from the top. This guy already has quite a bit of geometry that I've added before. But for this guy, I'm going to bend him. So I can have an arch for a door or a circle for a window. And if I move the origin, I go into object mode, object, set origin to geometry, it moves it back to the middle. And so now I can go to this guy, which is a simple deform. And I can go to bend. And if I change the axis to Z, I'm looking right down the Z, notice it starts to bend around the Z axis. And I can change this to, let's say, 360. And just type in 360, hit enter, and I have a circle. Now, this is a transformation tool. It's in my little toolkit, but the actual geometry hasn't changed. If I tap into edit mode, I see the geometry is as it was before, but the modifier has made it look different. So I can go ahead and change the geometry, and I can say, for instance, scale this on, let's say I scale it on the Y, and my model is changing, but also the modifier is changing that circle. And so you can change the thickness in any direction, and then if I hit and apply that, now if I look at the geometry, I'll tab back into edit mode, now the geometry has changed. So as soon as you change the, apply the transform, it changes the geometry. Now if I delete these guys, I don't want that bubble in the end there, I'll take that, and if I turn on my transparency, I can grab all of the vertices around those two loops, and I can use my loop tools. So that's over in the N tab. If I go over to my N tab and hit, it's in edit. So let's go over, let's see, go over my N tab, go to edit, and go to, is it in edit? No, it's in, yeah, there it is, loop tools. And I say bridge, it just bridges that together. So now I have a contiguous geometry going all the way around with no breaks, and that's looking pretty good. Now, I think I want a little bit more, little bit less roughness, and so I'm going to add another modifier. This is called the subsurf modifier, and that's going to give it the appearance of being smoother, but then I still want to have some edges. And so I'm going to come in here and just add some loops. So Control R for loop cuts. I want one, hit Control R, it'll see, that's on the bottom, that's not where I want it. That's looking better. So I got one up the side there, and I want one, if I can find the right spot. Ooh, that's not where I wanted it. Let's see. Let's turn off the transparency. That's easier. Now I'll get the one on the top. That's what I was looking for. So just Control R, drag it out, and so that's a nice looking circle. Okay. Now I can scale the whole thing down if I want to. If I hit left mouse, Shift D, grab this guy out. I think I'll make another one. I'll add another modifier for this guy. This is same thing. Simple deform, loop on the Z-axis. But this time I'm just going to go to 180 degrees, and so I have an arch. And notice I didn't change the origin on this one, so it went around from that edge. The origin's over at the end. If you had put it in the middle, it would have deformed more like the circle I just did, but just so you can see different ways of doing this, I'm going to go ahead and grab this in edit mode now. I can scale the vertices. So if I take these guys and say scale, or if I grab these guys and say scale on the Z, it can be more thick that way. And if I look at it now from the top and grab just the edge, I can scale them out or grab it on the Y, and so I'll make it thicker. And you can get whatever shape you want just by moving these vertices around. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and apply that, and so now I've got a basic arch to work with, and I can still change the geometry in this. In object mode, if I scale this guy down on the Y, and I can scale it on, let's say, the X, and let's say I want to scale it on everything but the Y, I can do that. I move the origin to the geometry now, so now it'll scale around that point. and just play around until I get a shape that I like. So I rotate it around that edge, around the origin rather, and get him in place. I think I will scale him on the, let's see, Shift Y means I scale it on only the X and the Z, and so now I just scale it on the X and I get a shape that I'm happy with. Okay, cool. I'll just move this into place, and once I get it into my scene, I can maybe adjust the scale a little bit more. If I want the door frame to drop all the way down, I can just tab into edit mode, grab those guys and just hit grab on the Z and move them down. Same thing over on the other side. I've got my transparency button on, so I grab, I'm not just grabbing the front vertices, I'm grabbing all of them. And now I hit grab on the Z and move those down. Okay, cool. So that is the start. I'll just go ahead and nothing else I need to say here. You can watch the rest of the video as I add some more pieces. But that's it for me. Bye-bye.